afternoon. This is regarding QuickLaunch's seamless student journey, strategies for effective onboarding and offboarding. This is mainly regarding the higher education tech space, a lot of pain points, a lot of challenges regarding the maintaining of a proper user lifecycle and streamlining that through different application management systems via a particular agnostic identity system solution. So we are going to be talking more about that. So a very warm and good afternoon to everybody. I can see people are joining in. And it's been like, I believe, guys, like we are doing this webinar after quite some time. The last one that we did was with New Mexico Junior College. I think a lot of our panelists and guests who have joined in today, they already witnessed a similar webinar back in 2023. It was quite some time back. So we thought of, let's do one more because this is required. The industry of information technology along with identity access management is kind of evolving day by day. So it's necessary to always like keep us and keep everyone abreast with respect to whatever the developments are taking place and what we are exactly doing with our esteemed partners and preferable customers in this one. So good to see you all. Adam, you can always like give us a heads up when we need to actually start. Should we give another 1 or 2 or 3 minutes max?
Yeah, let's give 1 or 2 minutes max, and then we can start.
Yep. Everybody's looking very stern and stone today. One more minute to go, and then we'll be rolling. Good to go, Chief?
Yes, we can start.
Great. Thanks a lot, Adam. Let's begin today's session. This is really going to be a very conversational and a profound one for people who are joining in still. Don't worry about that. You won't miss out anything because we will be recording the entire webinar itself, and we will definitely share this once the webinar gets over through our broadcasting email from our marketing team itself. First of all, I would really like to finish this off first because without even explaining and without even delving into the details, it's really required that we should give the due credit to our marketing team. We have Adam Bailey and Kate, who are basically heading. Adam is heading the marketing team, and Kate is a product marketing lead who actually came up with this idea of let's have a webinar for this industry, for this space itself, for all of our existing and prospect customers, and of course participants who are joined in to learn and know more about the student journeys in the higher education tech space, and of course how to strategize that and with the help of a tool in order to onboard and offboard themselves and their end users, and how to seamlessly manage that. So that's the reason we have all gathered together over here. I'll do a quick introduction from my side, and then I'll quickly pass it over, and we'll follow. The slides will be there, sort of a backdrop that will act for everyone to know what we are talking about. So my name is Avi, and I'm leading the customer success team here at QuickLaunch, and I'm joined by Jim Knutson, who's our vice president of customer success. We have 3 special guests today. In our webinar, we have Eugene from Ferrum College, we have Kathy Hausmann from St. Mary's College, and we have Jake Fowler from Kansas City Art Institute. 3 of our most favorite, 3 of our preferred, and 3 of our most championed customers of QuickLaunch. And I don't like to call it customers, I would like to call strategic partners, because we would really love, we are kind of enthralled to have them on board today. So, and one more thing, this is in and around QuickLaunch, in and around things that these special guests are actually following in terms of their IT endeavors in their institute. And that's what it is all about, and how we can actually educate everyone, learn from your journeys, learn from your pain points and challenges, like how we can probably tackle those with your support and cooperation. This is the thought for today, that we are going to be moving forward with that. And people who are not enlisted currently in the existing member category for QuickLaunch, people who have joined in our panel for this webinar today, you'll get to see a lot of me and Jim going forward, and we hope that you get to see a lot of us, and that's the reason we are here. So I'll rather change the slide and I'll get this go. So I think the first thing is, let me also minimize my screen. This is going to be creating a disturbance. Yeah. So I've already done the introduction. We have met Eugene, you've met Jake, Jim, and Kathy and myself. We will be mostly talking today in the webinar. We don't intend to bore you. So we just need to make this very engaging, and it's a very conversational one. I would rather I would pass this. Let's start with the first one. We have Cancer City Art Institute at first. I'll pass this over to Jake. Jake, a quick introduction from your side to all the panelists and everyone out there about your institute, about yourself.
Yeah, we're a small nonprofit art school in the middle of the country in Kansas City. I've been working here in IT for just over 18 years, which is a little crazy. That's a lot of change in that time. And yeah, like I said, we're a small private art school, about 750-ish students. And yeah, it's thrilled to see what these students come up with. These young artists come up with. So it's a great place to be.
Great, splendid. I think let's introduce our next panelist over here. We have Ferrum College. Over to you, Eugene.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm Eugene Hacker. I've been with Ferrum now. I think Jake and I are competing here. I've also been at Ferrum for about 18 years. So I've been here for a while. My focus is networking, infrastructure, and that sort of thing. I've done a lot over the years. But yeah, Ferrum College, we're private liberal arts school. We're located in Ferrum, Virginia. It's a very rural area. We have a lot of scenery out here. I think that's one of the things I like most about the area. We also have on our campus our Blue Ridge Institute, which is it's a center of the Blue Ridge folk life. We have a lot of different things that they host over there, exhibits. It's one of the things we're very proud of about the Appalachian culture here. And yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Eugene. That's the scenic beauty was an added bonus, I believe. I'll pass this over to Kathy. Kathy, over to you.
Hello. So I'm Kathy Hausmann at St. Mary's College. We are located in Notre Dame, Indiana. There's a much larger school across the street from us that usually gets a lot of attention. I've actually been here for over 20 years. And my background is primarily tech support, overseeing our help desk, student support, and then I've kind of grown in responsibilities. So now I also oversee our system administration, our networking. I usually tell people I'm never bored. We are a women's liberal arts Catholic college, and we offer both graduate and undergraduate degrees, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And I believe people over here in the guest list and everyone who is attending the webinar, I believe you were looking at the description of the particular institutes, like the kind of courses, the kind of student enrollments they're carrying in. And also the very important factor is the ERP stack that they have. And I believe a lot of our guests who have actually joined in, taken their precious time today, I believe a lot of people will resonate with the kind of ERP stack all these three major important schools are carrying in their own environment. And that's going to be the profound what I can see, the milestone or profound point of rather having this discussion today, whether these ERP stacks or any other ERP stack, which is kind of in a similar environment, kind of resonating with you guys, because we're going to be mostly talking about all these items, like how we are actually talking to them, making them transfer the data, making them understand each other, and making how the environment be more seamless for the end users. At the end of the day, Kathy, Eugene, Jake, everybody is here for their own end users, for their own students, faculty, and staff, to make their experience better, to make the IT information technology space much better in their institute. And that's what we are trying to do with them and with everyone else. So I would rather go to the next part where we will start our discussion for today. So this is supposed to be a current situation. So we would like to explain this a bit and how it all started. Like, I have a couple of questions in mind, and then I'll pass the baton over to Jim to set the floor, right, for the context. So I believe a lot of questions comes to us, and we often do our research. We find a lot of questions that is kind of revolving in the market. That is mainly regarding how applications access can be streamlined. I have a 3,000 user strength at my institute, and how actually, and everybody, like for Blackboard, end users are using a different set of credentials. For, I believe for Banner, they're using a different set of credentials. For any other LMS, they're using a different set of credentials over there. It's a tedious hassle. We have been like bugged with this particular thought for a long time, and it's not a new thing in the market, in the industry altogether. And that's why the single sign, the germ of single sign-on probably gets seeded over there, gets born. So that is the first element to start the discussion with. And of course, then comes the security layers, like how, for example, Kathy Hausmann can actually identify herself, and the system will understand their digital identity and provide the gateway or to the keys of kingdom where all the applications are lying. This is another major thing that occurs. How can we be more GLBA compliant with having a proper infrastructure security layer with multi-factor authentication, or let's say with two-factor authentication for that matter? These are the couple of questions. Then comes the cloud migration way. Another major important thing. Everybody is migrating to cloud. Everybody is migrating. That's how we have kind of gathered all those thoughts. We've got all those responses from different set of verticals of customers, from different set of people, from different set of sectors and industry. Since QuickLaunch, and we tend to be dedicated to the higher education space, we would like to work in the higher education space because the product and solution is made in such a way that we want to cater to that particular field and providing the last mile service. So we thought of all these things and tried to come up with this sort of a webinar where we can address all these challenges, answer them, discuss them with you guys. And then comes the major mammoth part, or the elephant. Let's address the elephant in the room. How can I manage a college or a school with an end user strength of, or a full-time enrollment of 1,500 to 2,000 or 4,000 or more than that? How to manage their entire user life cycle? How they get what I can say purge or deprovision when they graduate? How can we remove or revoke the access to different applications? How can we maintain that neat and clean infra of identity and access management at the same point of time? So a lot of questions falling under the similar purview, similar bucket, but we would try to address each and every one through this particular conversational webinar that we are having. So the current situation, we'll be explaining it a bit. Majorly, I believe to a certain extent, it will resonate with a lot of you guys who have this sort of a situation in your industry, in your school, or you might be having a different setup, maybe a slightly different from this one. But we would like to understand your current situation, like to understand the situations that all these three esteemed guests have gone through. So I'll pass this over to Jim. Jim, you can probably start talking about the current situations with all the other three participants. I would rather switch on the slide now.
Sure enough. Thank you, Avi. Very good introduction. I do want to kind of start off a little bit at a higher level and kind of find out why we're all here in the first place, and why even seek an identity solution in the first place. What business problems were you originally trying to solve? So start with Eugene there. Can you tell me the reason why you started with an identity solution in the first place? What business problems you were trying to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's a great question, because that's a great place to start. So basically, I mean, we started off like a lot of people, and Avi had touched on this before. we had a lot of different solutions deployed all over the place, different passwords for everything. We had apps in the cloud, local apps. We had kind of a hybrid deployment of not quite a single sign-on type solution. We had some using a few applications using ADFS, but for the vast majority of them, it was a different login to be able to keep track of. And when users would call in, sometimes they would get a little bit confused because they would change a password in one place and it had to be changed in another place. So there was a little bit of discrepancy between them. Also, with the GLBA compliance coming, we didn't have any kind of multi-factor deployed. And then the third, situation too, was that we had an ERP system that we had maintained on-prem, and we moved it off-premise up to the cloud into a hosted environment, and we needed to get around certain things with that for integration. So we really needed something that was going to be able to seamlessly integrate really for the student and staff experience here. So those are some of the reasons why we started looking, and and then we found this solution, and I can elaborate a little bit more as we go, but it fit all the check boxes as we went down.
Perfect. Thanks, Eugene. And what I like is some of the different reasons that people start their identity journey. Kathy, can you tell me about why you started identity in the first place at St. Mary's?
So we actually discovered QuickLaunch from a session very similar to this. And we were looking at something for multi-factor authentication. We had to have it implemented by a specific date to renew our cyber liability insurance. And so we found it. We basically had it up and running in a month. It was amazing, exactly as advertised. And so after we've had that in place for a while, we are now moving towards a different student information system. So all of the homegrown scripts that we have in place for account creation are no longer going to work when we move to the new system. So now we're looking at account provisioning and making it work for us.
Very good. That's a good story about why you did it in the first place. And then, as you go down your identity road or your journey with an identity, other things kind of pop up. You join for compliance reasons, and while you're doing that, you understand, you find other business problems that you can solve with identity. And provisioning was one of them. Can you tell me a little bit about your provisioning process prior to, or what it is now, I guess? You mentioned you have some scripts, and what are the pain points that you have around those?
So the great news is our scripts really work well because they were all homegrown, very customized for us. A student would deposit, we would wait 48 hours in case there was some kind of typo or something in the account. We would create the account. They would get notified by email. We used Active Directory. All of the passwords were synced, which made the original setup for MFA very easy. But as I said, we're now going to a new system. So we're trying to figure out how should, what's the best way to provision accounts. And then we've never really considered deprovisioning accounts, and we know we should. So that's also going to be a phase in this discussion that we haven't done before.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the deprovisioning. What kind of business reasons or problems are you trying to solve with deprovisioning? Does it cause you any trouble when you don't have a complete lifecycle management tool to use? Like, how long does it take to deprovision counts? And are there times where you've had an inactive user, they still got licenses and other software downstream, and how does that impact your business today?
Deprovisioning is entirely manual. And as most people can probably understand in higher ed, sometimes people leave, but they don't really leave. We have emeriti faculty who they have retired and then they still teach. Or we have students who graduated that then want to come back and finish their degree because they didn't really graduate, they just walked. Or We have students who take classes here at the college, but they actually attend across the street or in another location. And so they take a class, and they might take a class in the fall, and then they'll come back the next fall to take another class. So they're like students, but not students, but we don't want to have their account terminated because they might still use it in the in-between time when they're not current students. Things that I'm sure other people have to deal with. So as I said, we've never been able to really deprovision accounts, and we're trying to see if that's something we are going to be able to do.
Thank you so much. Jake, can you tell me a little bit about your journey? What drove you into identity in the first place, and what your processes were like prior to getting with QuickLaunch?
Yeah, again, I've been here so long. We've had so many different processes, many of them very manual. We've had scripts, but then the guy that I think he wrote them in Python, and the guy that wrote them left, and we couldn't edit them. We didn't have we don't have a programmer on staff, so we couldn't edit them, and so they kind of went out the window. We found some other tools that let us do a little bit of automation, but it's still, a lot of spreadsheets. But yeah, with the identity management. We actually applied for an in-kind grant from the campus consortium, which led us to the QuickLaunch. We had been looking because basically everything they just said too. We had an ADFS server that worked with some services, but it was hard to manage. A lot of services weren't attached to it at all, and so they were separate passwords. So we were looking, all the things, security, convenience for the end users, the multi-factor authentication, all those things. We were hoping to, there are so many different focuses, but again, I think my focus was really on the end users, making things easier and more accessible to them. They only have the one password they have to remember. They just log in. For the most part, there's still a few services we haven't put in there in the single sign-on, but for the most part, all the apps they need are in QuickLaunch. So they go to our portal and they log in, and they can click on the app, and they're good to go. So yeah, convenience is a huge part of it, but also the security. We hadn't really thought about MFA, but then when we did start looking at the cybersecurity insurance and all those, we already had it in place. So that definitely helped.
That's very helpful to have a requirement already in place when they ask for it, for
Right.
sure, especially around the cybersecurity. I wanted to ask Eugene here a little bit too more about his process with provisioning, and tell me a little bit more about the student experience and how that's changed for your students, and even maybe alumni, how that is overall for them as opposed to how it was before you started with QuickLaunch, and now that you're kind of down the road a little bit, how's that experience for them now?
Yeah, absolutely. So our situation before was basically, we had separate, accounts all over the place, and you brought up alumni. So in our school, we had given access to alumni and retirees to be able to keep their email accounts. They didn't keep the other accounts, but they would keep email accounts, which was it's been fairly unique. And so we ran into an issue where we're like, well, we still want them to have accounts. And in the beginning, it was kind of a challenge because Google, because we're a Google school as well, didn't give you that split authentication option where you can have some people sign in via a single sign-on solution, and some people sign in via native Google sign-in. And so actually at the time, well, they've changed it since then, but we had the extra licenses. QuickLaunch worked with us on that to be able to still be able to give that to our alumni until Google actually made the switch to where we can actually have two different situations at the same time. So that was a really cool thing. But one of the biggest things was too is that when we were moving from an on-premise solution to an off-premise solution, where we're going and moving our student information system, ERP, into a hosted environment, one of the hurdles that we had too was that we could not actually touch it, because of security concerns. They didn't want third parties interacting with that database. And so we're actually a colleague campus. And so what we found though is that there's, we were able to natively integrate that to be able to generate Active Directory accounts, in which case QuickLaunch can just, piggyback off of that, grab the newly created Active Directory accounts to pull it into the online database, and be able to create accounts in Gmail and our LMS, which we use Brightspace, product of D2L. And all of that was done pretty well. So I mean, we're using that now and provisioning those accounts. The other accounts that we don't need to actually create that work off of true single sign-on, they just come through the single sign-on solution. They authenticate there in the QuickLaunch portal, and then it automatically signs them into these other third-party applications. So actually, I mean, it's worked pretty seamlessly. I know someone had put in the chat a little bit ago about whether it was real time. And actually, it depends. So we actually we went back and forth with this a few times with some of our apps syncing. And one thing from my experience that I'll tell you up front is it depends on what you need to how you need it deployed. So going into it, we actually had some of the processes kicking off when we were experimenting with it a little bit faster than they needed to. And, so some of our processes are real time, and some of them are generated like every 15 minutes, but you do have the flexibility to change that and actually set when your processes happen. So yeah, it could be real time. If that's what you need, you can definitely set it that way.
Exceptional. I mean, that's the great part. I believe, if I may interject, so the provisioning tool works in such a way, I always tell this to everyone, that it's gonna obey what you are saying it to. So because first of all, it has a lot of, it's not scripts at the end of the day, these are pre-programmed codes, and it works on the basis of your institute's business regulations and policies. What do you exactly want to do with those accounts? How do you want to proceed with them? And it's the logics are set with mutual agreement, with mutual discussion during the implementation phase itself. And when it comes to the regulation of it, or how it runs, definitely, like as Eugene mentioned, like there are a lot of features associated with it. Like it can run on a real-time basis. It can run 15 minutes, 5 minutes, on daily basis, 12 hours. There are a lot of categories for it. So that gives you that leverage, flexibility, and upper hand, even that you want to have a centrally managed tool with one single console, one single platform, then that's the ideal one-stop solution where you will be able to toggle it, use it according to your own ways. And that's how the entire cycle works, where you loosen out the dependency on fatigued, old, outdated PowerShell scripts, where even human resources are also involved. And then comes the business challenge of the cost associated with it. So it's kind of knocking off a lot of unnecessary items with one particular one-stop tool itself. And I think, as Jim, you also mentioned the kind of business drivers and everything, but I think the takeaway of this would be, what do you think, Jim? The takeaway of this would be the primary reasons like security, compliance, student success and experience, success for IT admins and experience for them, like 3 major pillars that would actually take care of the entire identity diaspora altogether that's required.
Yeah, I mean, offering a secure and frictionless experience for the users or students or faculty or whoever you have there is really key. And having, the key here is security. We're a security company when it comes down to it. I saw a comment in here about multiple accounts across the enterprise and how you deal with the safety of credentials. We don't know the credentials. We don't need to know the credentials.
Exactly.
The users can do their own password resets. So if you're fighting password resets right now all the time, you've got, I've talked to prospects and customers that have had a team of 4 people handling password resets and, MFA resets, et cetera. And, they deployed QuickLaunch and they went to one person doing 20% of their time handling some of those edge use cases where people still needed to have help with that. So it's very secure. Multi-factor authentication on top of that. So even if someone did get your password, we have a multi-factor on top of that. And just for the sake of this conversation, multi-factor is something you know and something you have. A lot of people think multi-factor is a security question, which it is not. That is still something that you know. It could also be something you are. That's a biometric. So we have our authenticator. So you would get a notification sent to your device saying, hey, did you just try to sign in at this location from this computer, from this IP address? And you simply look at that and you click yes on your mobile device. You don't have to enter anything else into another box anywhere. It's very low friction, very high security. And then also on top of that, we've got the adaptive multi-factor, which allows us to look at situational, situations like you can say, okay, this guy logged in from the last 25 times from the same browser, same IP address, same location, and he's accessing an application that we have a low security posture on, like maybe an employee portal, something like that doesn't have any payroll or PII in it. Do I necessarily need to ask them for authentication this time? So it's smart enough to put some business intelligence in there, and it's also smart enough to step that up. For instance, if they're signing into their payroll information, maybe we want to ask them every single time they sign into that for MFA, so that we know it's them. That is super secure. There's a little bit of friction there, but again, just pressing yes on your mobile device with the QuickLaunch authenticator gets them right through that. So it's a good way to do that. Thanks, Avi.
Yep. And also when we, Kathy can probably chime in that particular part. I mean, she is about to get in that particular route of implementation of automated provisioning, whereby, because there is another functionality called the first-time user registration. So that is something which works like a charm when it actually coupled with automated provisioning, because at the end of the day, as Jim mentioned, we don't recommend being a security company handing out passwords to your end users. And why to generate that? Give your end users the ability and the flexibility and the leverage to create their own passwords. And for even creating those own passwords, that happens via the first-time user registration module itself. And that is where the attributes can be configured, like your SAM account name, your employee ID, your student ID, the end user from whom the welcome letter is generated, that also via the provisioning tool itself. Then they can actually probably get into the portal, answer those questions. That's a first security check to answer those questions. And then even at that level, that layer of first-time user registration, which is like a self-registration altogether, the MFA can be enabled. Another security check, so that at least there won't be any user profile sitting in your AD without a password at the end of the day. I think I had a conversation with some Pfeiffer University once regarding this, like, what's the best practice? I think that the best practice is give null passwords. It will set a null password value from the provisioning tool itself. Let your users create their own passwords, obeying the password policy, which will be QuickLaunch's password policy sitting on top of your AD password policy. So that's how the streamlining thing occurs over there. So end users creating their own passwords, passing through the MFA layers, and then finally setting up their own profile with QuickLaunch and setting up the other security factors or MFA profiles. Kathy, I believe you're about to get through that route, right? On the provisioning part, because first-time user registration was one such thing that's going to be implemented and going to be enabled. Any thoughts on that part?
Yes, that is something that we're looking at, because it is actually very similar to what we're already doing, but takes it a step further. So that is something we're looking at, and having that you generate your password and it's going to meet these requirements, so that we know it's going to be compatible with Google's password requirements and Microsoft's password requirements and everybody else's, so that we don't have to worry about, hey, this works for everything but Microsoft. That'll all be taken care of when they create that initial password.
Great. And I think I'll move to the next one, because this is the flow that we were talking about the current situation in an institute. And more or less, I believe it might have resonated with a lot of people who are present in the panel today and also in the guest list. I mean, the kind of provisioning that generally happens across the industry with respect to, I won't call it a legacy, but of course, like somewhat a legacy system where scripts and shell commands are used. So I'll move to the next one and just let everyone know that how actually what happens when this QuickLaunch blue box when this magic box sits in your environment, in between all of your intertwined database and ERP systems, and how it really actually occurs over here. So I mean, Jim, do you wanna throw some light on this particular part? Because Kathy is going to be and St. Mary's is going to be tasting this experience, and then of course it'll move over to Jake. He's going to be also by the end of the year, he's going to be starting with the provisioning project itself with QuickLaunch once the ERP gets sorted. So Jim, you want to chime in over here regarding the process flow in a nutshell of QuickLaunch provisioning?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really good example of this is the end state where you want to get to with lifecycle management for users or provisioning, deprovisioning, whereby you don't even have to create a user in the first place. It's going to be created for you from the HR system, and a lot of times the end users are going to create those. HR is going to vet that information. Then once it's in the HR system, so this is basically called HR-driven provisioning, or something out of your SIS or HRM system. QuickLaunch watches over there, sees a new user come in, brings it in, grabs the attributes that it needs, either from Active Directory or from other sources, populates those attributes for the user. That would be, account name, email, phone, that kind of thing, and then pushes them out to the other applications that you have with provisioning. What's really cool is when we get a user created, you always get that chicken and the egg thing. Like, how are you going to give this person an email or create a user and give them a work email address when they don't have a work email address yet? And what we do is we go out to Office 365, provision that user out, they get an email address, and then that goes back all the way through back into the HR system. The other piece of information that's usually something hard to get until the user is actually created is their phone number. So maybe their phone number gets provisioned. It's just another attribute that joins the user attribute list on that user profile. And then that can also get pushed back into the HR system. So this is kind of, that's the whole user creation process. On the reverse side of that, especially with higher education customers, I'm noticing that, obviously there's a lot of turnover. It's not like you have employees there. People are going to be there 2, 4, maybe a little bit longer for years. But there's always this lifecycle management going on. And this is always a problem that needs to be solved. You don't want to have users assigned to other applications that they don't necessarily need. That's a security concern. Additionally, they're taking up licenses. So having this all automated and running properly, as soon as that student hits like a graduated status, we can deprovision the applications that we want to deprovision for them. They still may need access to email or some other things like that, depending on what you have configured for them. But then just running that whole life cycle, and then you're literally hands off, sitting back in your chair, just watching it all happen. It's not difficult to get done. It is just it's one of those things that once you do it, you can't. You'll sit back and go, "Why didn't I not do this sooner?" It's truly, I've been in HR or not HR, I should say IT for over 35 years. So I should probably not date myself that bad, but I've run help desk and that kind of stuff. Started off as a tech and worked my way up, and I've spent the last 12 years in identity itself. And seeing all these problems, I'm like, man, I wish I had this, 20 years ago to be able to solve these problems that we struggle with so hard in IT. But this is basically the whole system, beginning to end, student to alumni.
Absolutely. I think there is one major thing that also comes over here, that is kind of the write back, because that is another what I can say cherry on top of it. Like, for example, if the user needs a resync, if the last name changes or of something or the other happens with that particular username or something, definitely it gets gets factored inside your AD itself, because that's a part of it. But what happens from the source of truth where it is being generated, whether it's being Banner or Gensabot or Workday or Oracle, mind it be like we have more than 500 connectors inbuilt in our product itself. So there are no other, I mean, it covers almost all of the ERPs on this planet. Doesn't necessarily always sticking to a higher ed, but it has all the ERP solutions, which is inbuilt connectors in our own product itself, which can connect to any database. But yes, the write back happens, if the last name changes, if Jim's last name changes, for example, or Kathy's or somebody else's, then how it actually gets written back into your authoritative source of identity from where the information is being fetched up from. It truly happens in this particular product. Not only changes inside your AD, but even the same update goes back into your ERP or your SIS from where we exactly extracting the data. And when it comes to extraction, I think we might be getting a lot of questions around that particular part, that how are you able to connect to our database in cloud or on-prem? Yes, of course. I mean, we can connect to any database, whether it be if it's a CSV import, we can do that. If it's an on-prem database, we can do that. If it's an Oracle database, we are definitely doing that. If it's a cloud one, we can definitely do that. So there are n number of mechanisms or routes that we can connect to, be it like a secure site-to-site VPN tunnel or through our REST APIs. So it's completely what I can say, it's completely customizable in that end in terms of data extraction, I believe. I think we have covered a bit about the provisioning part. I think Jake has been keeping very silent. So let's move over to Jake right now, and the full spotlight on Jake. So Jake, you have been going through we have went through the single sign-on experience with access management, and pardon me, gentlemen and everyone speakers, we probably might be digressing a little bit from the main topic, but we are majorly talking about the entire identity diaspora altogether. So Jake, implementation experience is a bigger thing. No matter we talk about products, no matter we talk about solutions, our solutions might be really good, cutting edge, and probably state of the art. But what happens when it comes to the real implementation phase? How can you actually describe your experience, and like in a completely frank manner to everyone, like how has been the journey with QuickLaunch till Nate? Because all three speakers, you are at different stages of your usage with QuickLaunch, as Kathy rightfully mentioned. So how do you actually probably describe your experience when it comes to the post-sales process, when it comes to the implementation? We can start talking about your single sign-on journey.
Yeah, good question. I mean, like Kathy said, it was the single sign-on implementation itself was very quick. It was really pretty seamless, pretty painless. Once we got started, and even now that we've had it for, I'm trying to remember, little over 2 years, I think. Even adding new relationships with other vendors is pretty seamless, depending on the vendor. Sometimes it's tricky working with the vendor side, but yeah, even those are fairly easy to set up, new single sign-on relationships. We had also started implementation of the automated provisioning, and it was delayed a couple times, mostly from our side, and then we ended up putting it on hold because we made a bigger decision to switch our ERP and SIS, which we just kicked off both those projects. So once we get our new systems, we're hoping to be live on those in the fall. We're gonna start looking at the automated provisioning again. I didn't see the point of like setting it up with, I don't want to say who we're with, who we're currently with, but I didn't see the point of setting it up with a current vendor when we're just going to switch and have to do it all over again. So yeah, I'm excited to get all that set up. I'm excited to be done with this SIS implementation as well, but that's another story. So yeah, no, but yeah, the implementation, the single sign-on was really easy.
Absolutely great. And I think we have been talking a lot about passwords in our conversation today. A lot about passwords, like how can you generate passwords, where do you give passwords, synchronization, and everything around passwords. So guys, in our panels today, anybody, if you really feel that we are actually boring with you talking about more of passwords, we do have another way to eliminate that. So whenever you think of eliminating that, we have our one-step up upgrade called a passwordless upgrade, because that's the norm. That's where the industry is going. That's where we should be going in terms of security. Jake is currently is on the verge. I mean, it's in transit process, is in progress of implementing a passwordless one-step upgrade in his environment, in his school, so that the authentications takes place much more seamlessly, and the need of passwords is completely wiped out altogether for accessing all these web-based applications, or thick clients for that matter. So that's another thing that stays with QuickLaunch. That's with QuickLaunch, we're kind of also talking more about that, creating more awareness, because I think in the higher education tech space, awareness is the key, because we are not actually operating in a full-fledged CIM or customer identity. So I think in the workforce identity sector itself, it's a major important goal that we should be talking more about awareness when it comes to new things, new developments, which are taking towards the right direction. All right, I believe, Adam, I think the next part will be opening up the poll, I think. So over to you, Adam. This is a poll. How are you currently, Snap, how are you currently provisioning your accounts from your SIS to or ERP to Active Directory? Adam, for how much time should we run the poll?
It'll be for 30 seconds.
Great. So guys, 30 seconds. We're really looking forward to some really good answers over here so that actually we can actually come in the place and tackle your pain points and challenges. Is 30 seconds over, or am I too fast? Uh-huh. That's here up on your screen, everyone, guys. So like a whopping 58% custom scripts, homegrown solution, and 25% is manual account creation. I believe manual account creation talks about getting the entire details in a CSV import from your HRF or applications admissions department and getting into your AD with the help of IT professionals to AD manager or something. Then comes the custom scripts or homegrown solution, mostly I think PowerShell. So I think we have a lot of work to do, a whole lot of new space coming in, and still, so that was the major turning point, or I would say major important point in terms of creating and devising this webinar, because this is what we were looking for, because this actually solidifies our research that 58% is still on a custom scripts or homegrown solution. Jim, you want to talk anything about this particular angle?
Yeah, so I mean, this is pretty common. I'm not surprised by the by the answers and where they're falling here. And you know, a lot of times you do a custom script and a homegrown solution. Those are great when they work, or that person is still working for you that wrote it and understands it. But you know, I would talk to a lot of customers that were like, and I think one of the panelists here mentioned it. You know, we had a guy, he wrote this, he left. No, I don't even know how it works. Nobody on this team knows how it works, and we are. You know, it worked for a while until something changed, and now we can't even modify it. So that's pretty common there. Other identity vendors, 17%, that's fine. And either not doing it or doing it manually right now, you know, that's the super hard way, but at least you didn't go through and write a script and then have to deprecate that at some point. Then more importantly is, you know, the landscape changes so fast. And, you know, applications that we add to our IT stack are just growing exponentially, and software is literally eating the world, especially SaaS software now. So as those things grow and change, you need to be flexible and be able to bring those into your environment very smoothly and with low friction. And so, you know, writing those connectors and getting them done, that's great with the scripting. But you know, turning to QuickLaunch, we do, you know, hundreds and hundreds of these connectors. So it's one of those things that's great. And I want to kind of go through and answer some of the questions here as well that popped up. Yes, we do on-prem or off-prem with our connectors, so that's not anything new there. One of the other things I saw is, I didn't see mentioned, but I wanted to mention is our provisioning component is standalone, which is pretty unique in the identity and access management space. You can have another identity vendor you know, Azure, Okta, whatever, but maybe they don't write a connector for your student information system. We can come in and do that without having to manage the entire identity. Obviously, we would love to be able to manage that entire identity, but it's something we can certainly do as a standalone product, which is pretty unique, I think. I want to make sure we give some credit to that. And then I don't want anybody to leave yet, but I do want to let everybody know I'm going to ask one more question to the panelists at the end, and it's going to be really good for everybody to stick around. Make sure you get that before we leave. I do want to leave some questions for some time for Q&A before we get to that.
Mhm.
Thanks, Avi. I did see there was a question about pricing, so we do see that now.
Yeah.
And we've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure I leave a few minutes here for Q&A. And I need to ask one question for all the panelists here at the end here. And I guess we have a poll question coming up. This will stay up for 30 seconds, so I'll be quiet while we answer this one here. I do see another question that popped up here about how easily it can adapt to changes in the organization size and structure. If you're looking to scale, this is a solution that you need. This could work from anywhere from, you know, makes sense for 100 to 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 users. It's very scalable. That's the whole point of this. We want to lessen your workload on this thing and make those, like I went to work for a very large company once. It was 50,000 users. It took me 2 weeks just to get an Active Directory account. Had I had an identity solution in place for them, it would have taken 2 seconds. So it's just one of those things that is built to scale. That's kind of one of the huge benefits that you get from this kind of a solution.
Absolutely. And when it comes to infrastructure, guys, I mean, this is another thing which is very, very important to share, because it's very important. People don't generally talk about the backend infra altogether, because a lot of the issues might be attributed towards that particular part. But it's very important to understand that in such space, it's very important that the infrastructure that we are using in our backend itself, it's extremely scalable. There are multiple, what I can say, functional items or modules that are present. For example, Elasticsearch is a very important thing, because that makes it much more scalable, both horizontally and vertically. So when it comes to scaling up the entire product of automated provisioning, it is always doable, and is doable in minutes. And that's the reason we employ those services at our backend. And definitely AWS makes a huge difference altogether, because our instances, our databases are made out of that, which gives us enormous scope of redundancy also, and also facilitate these things. And we have like National Louis University's example with 50,000 full-time enrollment and running their D2L connectors. So Eugene, that's also kind of like similar setup, but with a huge enrollment and running the same thing. So that's also a good point for everyone to understand, like what sort of space we are catering to, or we are working, operating in. We always want the business enrollments and trajectory for our customers to increase, and that's enrollments at the end of the day.
Yep. Perfect. I don't see any other questions popping up. So as promised, I'm going to ask our all panelists one last question here. And Eugene, we'll start with you and then go to Jake and then end with Kathy. And it's the same question for all three of you. Is what do you recommend is your best IT practice for higher education when it comes to identity and access management? And do you see QuickLaunch aligning with your thoughts and along on this mission statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this solution does align. So one of my biggest things, you know, as we're going on our kind of a security journey here, is, you know, making sure that we're deploying something that's not only going to scale and offer a good user experience, but it's also going to be secure. And, when we originally implemented this, we started with single sign-on and automated provisioning. And then, we had looked at it and we're like, well, now's as good a time as any to implement multi-factor. And honestly, I mean, we had anticipated a little bit more pain in that, whenever you roll out something, you don't know how your users are going to react. But it really was very seamless. And it was actually surprising how easy it was to deploy something like that without so much heavy lifting. So I think, the biggest thing is just, definitely planning. My thoughts are, just get the communication out there. Make sure that you communicate with your end users, and then, when you implement things like multi-factor, it really is a fairly seamless deployment.
Thanks, Eugene. All right, Jake, what do you recommend as your best IT business practice in relation to higher education and identity and access management? And how do you see QuickLaunch aligning with that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Eugene said. I think one of the biggest things for us is balance. Obviously, you need security, but you don't want to annoy your users too much either, right? So that's
Right.
I mean, you want to make it as frictionless, as easy as you can, and QuickLaunch has done that. I mean, when we rolled it out, I was honestly surprised at how quickly people adopted it. Even some of the less tech savvy folks. I think we're all getting used to the idea of MFA in whatever form it is, if it's a text message or whatever. But we hadn't had anything like that here. We'd had a password strength requirement, but that was about it. So yeah, I mean, I think striking that balance between not annoying your users and providing a good amount of security, because that's more and more important every day.
Every time you can make a business decision around having it more secure and having it less friction in the sign-on or enrollment process or anything else, that's going to make your end user, students, faculty, staff, alumni, everybody else all that more happy. It's like the best security you can have is the one you didn't even feel like you were intruded upon when it happened.
Exactly.
Cool. Thanks, Jake. All right, Kathy, how about you? What do you recommend as your best IT business practice for higher education when it comes to identity and access management? And how does QuickLaunch align with that?
User education and documentation.
Okay.
We had very little pushback originally because we got the information out there. We explained why we were doing this, what we were doing, what it was going to look like. So when we went live, and we picked the Ides of March. No, beware the Ides of March. It's very good. And that was it. By the end of the day, it was done. And because we didn't get a lot of pushback because the users understood why we were doing it. We do get the occasional complaint. Why does it keep asking me? And we address that. Turns out some people actually have their web browsers set to clear their cache after every session. So using that adaptive MFA that we implemented wasn't working for them because they weren't caching anything. But that really, our rollout went very smoothly because we made sure to let the users know from the very beginning what was going on, when it was going on, what it was going to look like, and then did it.
That is so true with, we're all seasoned IT pros here. And, I found that, if you communicate something clearly and effectively and your end users actually read it, a change in IT process is almost frictionless, or like it didn't even happen because everybody already knows this is what it's going to look like. This is what's going to happen. This is what to expect. And, it's like we used to do a change and we would just brace for all the tickets that were going to come in, no matter how much we communicated, it seemed like. But as we learned to communicate more effectively with our end users, that process became less painful. And that was one of my favorite things about learning about IT and getting into that and communicating with end users is essential. If they know it's coming, it's going to be very, very little pain. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists today for for all their time. And Avi, you were a great MC today. Did a
Thanks
great
a lot.
job. And thank you, attendees, for hanging out with us today and learning more. If you want to know more, feel free to reach out to Avi, myself, Adam, or just respond in the chat here that you'd like to learn more. We're happy to jump on a call with you guys and walk you through it, how it would work in your environments. So thank you, everybody, and that will conclude our webinar right on time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and always like giving due credit to our entire team itself, because it's the human minds at the end of the day behind the product, behind the tech. It ranges from our chief technology officer to the entire tech support team, the implementation team, tech leads, and our network support people. Every single person who has made sure to have this product, and we've went through numerous ups and downs, but now everything is going all smooth, all good. It's a part of the journey. So, I mean, I would like to extend my thanks to every single person, even the customer-facing teams and everybody who is in daily touch with all these three esteemed partners and all other customers throughout. So a great shout out for them, and a great shout out for Jake, Kathy, and Eugene for actually being so supportive and joining this webinar. It really means a great thing to us. We would like to have you more in the coming sessions, and we will be organizing more of such educational webinar sessions in the coming months, guys. So everybody just watch out this space for more of the items coming from the tech space. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you all.